we've been watching this story very closely here on Redacted. On this show, the movements of the World Economic Forum. Become fascinated with them because what maybe started out sort of sounding like conspiracy theories around the Great Reset or, all of the craziness that we've heard from the World Economic Forum over the past couple of years. It's all true and it's all written on their website and it all is now put into place and in action. We're watching farmer revolts across the world. We're seeing uprisings thanks to what the World Economic Forum is putting in place. We've seen mandates, we've seen lockdowns. So get the idea of conspiracy theory out of your head. It's all happening. Well, the Wall Street Journal has a very interesting question, which falls right in line with the World Economic Forum's new mission. And this question by the Wall Street Journal is this: why does the IRS need guns? It's a great question. Notice the byline of the story. The article was from 2016. That's 6 years ago. And at the time the Wall Street Journal wrote this and pointed at under the Obama administration, the number of non-Defense Department federal officers authorized to make arrests and carry firearms at the time was 200,000. This is 2016. 200,000. That exceeds the number of U.S. Marines at 182,000. Just let that sink in.
Wait, the number of U.S. Marines total or the number of U.S. Marines who also carry guns?
Well, every U.S. Marine is
right, I'm just saying.
U.S. Marines.
Okay.
So the number of federal officers authorized to make arrests and carry firearms was 200,000. Now exceeds the number of U.S. Marines at 182,000. Even then, in 2016, 6 years ago. That was 6 years ago. Times have changed, and it's gotten actually much, much worse. By 2016, the number of federal officers with arrest and firearm authority has tripled since 1996. Do you see where we're going with this?
Yes.
Tripling. Again, this was 6 years ago. And today in 2022, you're probably not surprised to learn that it's gotten much, much worse. In fact, the same time they're working very hard to take away your rights, to take away your ability to arm yourself, right? So they're working overtime on that side, while at the same time arming as many federal officers and agents as they can in agency after agency and after agency. Democrats just expanded the number of IRS agents by 87,000. That was part of the Inflation Reduction Bill. Mm-hmm. So tell me how 87,000 armed IRS agents actually reduces the cost of groceries or gas.
Clayton, that's what you need 87,000 new reps or agents to go after the rich, because there's so many rich people, like billionaires and stuff. You're going to have to be sending 20,000 agents to one billionaire's house in order to get an accurate accounting. Yeah, exactly.
To find him.
I mean, it really, again, if we go back to the definition of inflation, is too much money chasing after too few goods. And then you think about IRS agents taking money away from people, right? And putting it into the government's coffers. That equation does not change. The same amount of money exists, right? Chasing after too few goods. Well, I can't work this out.
No, and if they're printing more of that money, it's not going to you. It's going to Wall Street.
Right.
It's going to lobbyists.
There has to be more goods created here.
Right.
To reduce inflation.
They sent me sorry, but they sent me $1,600. What are you talking about? I got plenty.
Oh,
yes. Who did? The IRS?
And again, and they vowed they're not going to come after anybody that makes less than $400,000. So I don't know why everybody's freaking out. They said that if you make less than $400, you're completely safe. They're not going to start, tracking your Venmo transactions or anything.
Right.
Of course not.
Yes, they are. If you make less than $400,000 a year, President Biden told us, right? They're not going to come after you. That's turned out to be total horseshit. And when Senator Joe Manchin was asked just the other day who was the swing vote in all of this to make this happen, what does this actually do to reduce inflation? He said, it doesn't. It doesn't. So right there, this was all a boondoggle of $700 billion, right? Was meant to expand the size of government, print more money, increase the number of IRS agents who are armed to come after you. Again, goes back to the World Economic Forum's plan to consolidate power, to take away your property rights. You will own nothing by the year 2030, which is their plan. They don't want you to own anything. They don't want you to have personal property. Why are all these billionaires in the consolidation buying up all of the farmland across the United States and the world? I mean, it's right there in their agenda. So in its escalating, all of this, their arms, their ammo stockpiling, the amount of stockpiles that the federal government, listen to this, they're creating are unlike anything we've ever seen before. According to Zero Hedge, over the last 20 years, the number of these federal officers with arrest and firearms authority has nearly tripled to 200,000 from 74,000 back in 1996. Tripled. And listen to this. They say in Zero Hedge, this de facto standing army is made up of weaponized, militarized civilian forces which look like, dress like, and act like the military. They're armed with guns, ammunition, and military-style equipment, are authorized to make arrests, and are trained in military tactics. But what you might be wondering is, are they the military then? Because don't we have posse comitatus law? You can't use the military to go after citizens, right? So, well, forget that. Let's just create our own army to go after citizens. We'll just go around the law. They may look like the military, but they're not. These stooges are federal government agents. The IRS has stockpiled 4,500 guns and 5 million rounds of ammunition in recent years.
And also on the ammunition, there were reports saying that a lot of it was hollow point bullets. And you know what I mean? So that's like, you don't just hurt somebody with a hollow point. That has one objective.
Right.
So it's like, why do they need that kind of ammunition?
Yeah, 4,500. And then put the rest of these back up on the screen, including 621 shotguns, 539 long barrel rifles, and 15 submachine guns. That's what the IRS needs, submachine guns. What, are they taking down Waco? Like, what do you need 15 submachine guns for? In fact, it was revealed this week that the IRS has a college campus grooming program aimed at recruiting college kids to become armed agents that can hunt you down. So they're starting the grooming early at college campuses. Watch this news report explaining what happens on these college campuses with IRS agents.
No, these aren't actual police officers. They're students posing as special agents for the IRS, arresting a man who is wanted for tax evasion.
Who are you guys? What is this?
We're the IRS. You're under arrest. You're going to jail, buddy.
Most people don't even know that the IRS has criminal investigators who use their accounting skills and their authority as a special IRS agent to help solve tax crimes.
We are the only agency that can work investigations regarding tax evasion and other tax-related offenses.
The Adrian Project has been helping advertise the IRS Special Agents CI's roles for the past 15 years by visiting different schools around the nation.
It was named after Adrian University because that was the first place it happened at. There were a public information officer in Detroit, Michigan, who came up with this.
This is only the second time this project has taken place in Utah, and Dixie State was selected for one of them. 31 accounting students and those studying forensics or criminal justice took the afternoon to discover other options where they can use their skills.
Tax fraud, where he wasn't reporting as much taxes as he should have.
If you have an accounting degree mirrored or paired with criminal justice, that makes you very marketable in this line of work.
Sworn-in IRS criminal investigators can conduct surveillance and undercover operations after finding what appears to be tax evasion. To become an agent, hirees must go through 6 months of special training.
We have regular trainings in firearms, building entry, so it encompasses, it's a mix of being behind the computer, but also being out in the field, doing interviews, doing search warrants, or making arrests.
Oh,
okay.
It's a little of everything, for the aspiring student. So that's a little bit of computer work, but it's also great if you want to go out and issue search warrants and break into people's homes.
I mean, it does make the job more exciting. So recall that Commissioner Charles Reddick testified in front of Congress that they had attrition of 17,000 agents over the last year because that job sucks. But if you get a gun and you get to rough people up, maybe math can be a little more fun that way.
They're like, I love accounting, but I really love guns. So what job is there for me?
Accounting and wrestling. What is something I can do both things together?
Let me go after poor Americans. Let me go after poor and middle class Americans who are barely
put them in the
scraping
gallows.
by. Yeah, and I'm not going after Jeffrey Epstein. No, I'm going after my neighbor's mom who's working 3 jobs right now to make ends meet. And she's a waitress, and maybe, just maybe, since she makes $2.17 an hour as a waitress and she relies on tips, maybe there's an accounting error that I can go arrest her for.
Well, the thing is, as a college kid, their brains, like, you can convince them that they're doing the right thing. Like, you can convince them, hey, these are just people that aren't paying their taxes. We have to enforce it because, if we don't get all this money, you know what I mean? Like, you can convince. That's why they prey on them for credit cards and stuff.
Yeah, they're what's the word? They're
impressionable.
Impressionable, sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's not just the IRS. We're bagging on the IRS because that's one of the big stories. But how about the Veterans Affairs? What the hell? Look at this. Look at your screen. The Veteran Affairs Administration, the VA, has purchased 11 million rounds of ammunition, equivalent to 2,800 rounds for each of their officers, along with camouflage uniforms, riot helmets and shields, specialized image enhancement devices, and tactical lighting for the Veterans Affairs? What the hell?
Again,
here's an idea.
It's boring to take care of veterans. If you want to keep people on your staff.
Yeah, here's an idea. Why don't you take care of veterans?
No, that's not
Why don't you?
fun.
Hey, all those veterans that were clamoring to get coverage because of burn pits in Afghanistan and Iraq. Maybe you could help those people instead of fighting about it. There's an idea. Maybe that's where some of this funding can go towards.
Who are they fighting?
I don't know if you're going to get into it.
Right, that's my question. Who the hell are they fighting? Who are they going after?
Unless they're just backup. But I don't know if you're getting into this in this story, but there was a story that I read where a guy was taken out of his house at like 6 o'clock in the morning. They went upstairs, gathered his kids, took them all outside, put them on the front lawn, ransacked his house. The whole time he's asking, who are you? Who are you? Who are you? And finally they came out, asked him where this woman is. And he said that was his ex-wife. She didn't live there. And then they admitted they were the Department of Education and she hadn't paid her loans.
What?
So it's like... Yes, the Department of Education. So I was wondering if that's on your list too.
It's not even on my list. I ran out of time. I ran out of room on my list because I didn't. So the Department of Education is now arresting people. No, they're not even on my list, but just, hey, add them to the list. Here's more though. Department of Homeland Security is on my list. The Department of Health and HHS, Department of Health and Human Services. I chose the wrong graphic there. Anyway, according to 4 million rounds of ammunition. In addition to 1,300 guns, including 5 submachine guns, 189 automatic firearms for its Office of Inspector General. Social Security, that's on my list because all those Social Security, like my mom, right? You got to go after these people. You got to go after these people. According to an in-depth report on the militarization of the executive agencies, the Social Security Administration secured 800,000 rounds of ammunition for their special agents, as well as armor and guns. Yes, the Social Security Administration needs armor.
Well,
the EPA needs armor too. The Environmental Protection Agency owns 600 guns. And now the Smithsonian, see that picture on your screen I chose of the Smithsonian Institution in Washington when you go to look at the natural, you can see the big elephant, you can see airplanes and stuff like that. And the NASA lunar modules and stuff.
When you said big elephant, I thought you were talking about John Dillinger, but...
No, that's one. You can see him there too, right? You can see
the original
but look at the
glass slippers from Dorothy.
The Environmental Protection Agency owns 600 guns, and the Smithsonian now employs 620 armed special agents. So what? They're going to go after Nicolas Cage in case he comes and steals the Declaration of Independence again?
Perhaps.
Or something?
They do want to prevent that.
So 620,
but that's not in the Smithsonian.
Every agency now has armed guards, every one of them. and they're taking your rights away, by the way. That's just the United States. That's just the U.S. What about the unelected World Economic Forum peeps? Yes, the same ones that just last week said we should start microchipping our children. Yeah, they said that. Like we do with our dogs, so we can track them down. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they want to be able to do that. So the same World Economic Forum that wants to microchip your children recently featured an interview with Melissa Fleming. So the World Economic Forum had Melissa on. She heads up global communication for the United Nations, and she announced a new recruitment of information volunteers. You can call them, I call them information warriors, to make sure that that misinformation is different from the truth. The truth as the WEF sees it. So Melissa said, quote, in this interview at the World Economic Forum, so far we've recruited 110,000 information volunteers. And we equip these information volunteers with a kind of knowledge about how misinformation spreads. And we ask them to serve as kind of digital first responders in those spaces where misinformation travels.
To triage, right?
Yeah.
You're sharing misinformation, so let's get a first responder in there to
so let's send
triage that.
Let's send one of our WEF first responders in there to stop this. This is the same World Economic Forum, by the way, that continues to push Europe to form its own army. Mm-hmm. What could possibly go wrong? Look at this. And they've been doing this repeatedly. This is from 2019, but they're continuing to do this. Is Europe ready for its own army? They do not want national boundaries. They do not want sovereign territory. They want unelected power consolidated. And so they make the point that Europe, because of the threats that the United States can't handle and NATO can't handle, Europe needs its own standing army. Okay. That's not enough. We don't have enough with NATO, the United States. We also need, and by the way, you and the United Nations, right. We now need a European army. Okay. You see where this is going? The continued militarization while they continue to take power away from people. Yes. Take away their land, take away their money and their guns and their weapons and everything else.
Yeah, and we don't ever talk about all these shadow government or shadow militaries that we don't even, like, they're not on the payroll, but like there's tons, like we've got shadow militaries in probably every country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, well, yeah, because again,
even here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The contractors and everything else. So yeah, they're on the payroll, but they're just not on the government payroll. They're on some other kind of payroll, an extra governmental payroll. So those are my thoughts on the World Economic Forum's massive army. And again, the weaponizing of our bureaucracy.
And the expansion of powerful governments that have weapons that we could do nothing about. I mean, I was reading this weekend sort of a history book about Ukraine. Talked about the great collectivization of the 1930s, where, it was different competing governments for this land, obviously, and it has been for hundreds of years. But I believe it was Russia that sent in their armies and decided to, because there was so much peaceful farmland in this area, and people were self-sufficient, and they thought, well, we can't have this. So they started to just come into people's farms and collect their animals and collect their grain and collect their food and collect their money, right? And this is the kind of thing that happens when you have too much military and too much independence of a population. In fact, so many people in Ukraine, they greeted the Nazis with like food and water and gifts because they thought, well, it can't be worse than Stalin. And then it did get, in fact, worse from them. So the more powerful we see governments become, the lower chance we have of having any kind of autonomy and independence as just everyday citizens.
The Nazis rounded them up and killed them. Yeah.
And also, to be clear, that would have been the Soviet Union, not Russia.
Yes, you're right. I'm sorry, I misspoke. It was a Stalin government in the early 1930s that was what is known as the Great Collectivism, right? And this is something that we all need to collectively, pun intended, be wary of, is when governments continue to empower themselves, continue to disenfranchise people who have any autonomy or financial independence, and continue to give themselves weapons to do so and take away our ability to resist.
There's a quote that was in this piece I was reading today by James Madison, President James Madison of the United States. Quote, "A standing military force with an overgrown executive branch will not long be safe companions to liberty." Think about that. Let me read it again. A standing military force with an overgrown executive branch will not long be safe companions to liberty. How can it be? Right?
Right.
How can it be a safe companion of liberty when they have this much power? This is why we need to vote. This is why we need to throw these people out.